Greetings, everyone. David Rene here with Fly Fishing Academy Northwest that you'll find on Facebook, or flycastingacademy.com. That's the website that I use for signing up students for casting lessons. Today I'm going to tie a fly that I have a great deal of respect and interest in because it solved a problem that I had when I was on the river. First, I have to talk about Rene Harrop. He's an amazing fly fisherman, and I was inspired by his fly, the Last Chance Cripple, and I did a variation on it. As many of you know, I really like the Klinkhammer style of emerger hook, and I use it in this pattern as well. The reason that it's significant for me is that there's a stretch of water that I get to fish here just about every year. And there's one pool in particular that is just ideal for dry fly fishing. And the trout in that pool are usually abundant. They're fairly good sized. And they're feeding constantly. There's almost always something on the water for them. Most particularly for me is the blue-winged olive, also referred to as the Baetis. I mean, that's the scientific genus for it. And there's 150 separate species of Baetis. And so in the United States, most of them that you encounter are blue-winged olives, but they're not always the same color combination. This particular stretch water does have a blue-winged olive that's very similar to what you'd expect to find, with an olive body and a gray to blue tinted wing. And so I took the Last Chance Cripple and turned it into the Last Chance Emerger. And I'm going to go over to the bench now, and we're going to look at that, and I'm going to show you how I tie it. So the first thing that you'll notice is that I have mounted a size 14, one of my favorite hooks. It's also available throh Orvis, but it's a Daiichi. The 1160, it's a size 14, and I've smashed the barb already on it, and I've attached some tying thread. And note that I have the hook in an unusual situation with the eye down because I want to start on the steep curvature of this hook in order to make it make sense. So I start by adding some tail material. This is Z-Lon, and I use a little bit of Z-Lon to create the image of an exoskeleton. In other words, a piece of material that that looks like the shuck of a, lost my thread. And I'm going to trim that back a bit. Also in the front, get rid of that little bit of tying thread that came loose. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a dyed turkey quill. And this is the piece that I'm going to tie in. And this can be a bit of a challenge if you haven't tied with either goose or turkey biats. This is one of those materials that's very, very helpful, but it's not real easy to manage. So, and now we'll make the first adjustment of the hook. Now that the biat is tied in, I'm going to shift the hook so that it's more upright, but it's still, as you notice, has quite a length to go, or quite a movement to go before it's before I can dress the front with the hackles. So I'm using a Hackle Pliers primarily because this material is difficult to manage as you wind it on. Move my tying thread forward to about where I want to stop wrapping the biot. And as you see, it ends up having a very real looking body, very segmented. And it's not a major feature of the fly, but I think it's rather important to get it right. And now that that's been secured and tied in, I'm going to move the hook one more time. And this will be the final position of the hook. And we'll now put some dubbing on this fly. And I'm using microfine dry fly dub in obviously in olive. And I'm taking a very tiny amount and I'm rolling it in the palm of my hand to form the piece of dubbing that I want to use. Trim off the excess. And as you know, if you've watched my other video on dubbing, simple dubbing, I don't try to add dubbing to the tying thread without first anchoring the dubbing on the hook itself. So now I'm twisting the dubbing onto the tying thread so that I can create the thorax. Now, in my case, I make a fairly thick thorax, but I don't take it all the way to the eye of the hook. It's only going to get in the way if I go too close to the eye of the hook. The eye of the hook in these small flies, even though this is a big one by comparison to size 14, it's difficult enough to secure the materials if so you want to be able to do this carefully. Now I'm wrapping back so that I'm in the middle of this. Now I'm going to take some Coldus Canard CDC, which is a feather from a duck, and this one is dyed obviously in a gray blue, and it's going to represent our wing. So I twist this material together to get it to do what I want it to do. And then I kind of identify where I want to tie it in. And I want the wing to be angled forward and pretty full. Now I'm going to cut the excess off, and in the process, I'm going to leave a small amount of it, which tends to demonstrate, or at least imitate, the right kind of emerger look. And again, this pattern approach is directly stolen from Rene Harrop. So this is a blue-winged. I'm sorry, it's a dun hackleneck, and I'm going to look for about a size 16 or 14. It's okay if the hackle on this fly is a little smaller than the actual hook size. So in this case, I picked a pretty short one, and I'm going to strip some of the marbles off so that I can tie that in. And I tie it in right at the same place in the center of the thorax. And again, I'm going to need the hackle pliers. This is a pretty small hackle. And I'm leaving the thread there in the center notice that the color of the blue dun hackle is has some tan color, I would say, in it, and I chose it when I purchased it because I liked that particular color. I think it's very buggy looking. Anyhow, we'll secure the hackle now that it's been wrapped. Trim off the excess. And now it's pretty much ready to go. I just need to move the CDC fibers out of the way and more upright. And now I can apply my whip finish. And I think you can see how crowded the eye becomes, even though we left part of the hook shank bare before we did that. But there you have it. So the story about the pool in Idaho that I fish a lot is that there were always some blue-winged olives, and I experimented with all kinds of options. And the fish are pretty selective because they've got lots of naturals rising to the surface. So this one works particularly well for me because it's basically signaling to the fish that here's an emerging blue-winged olive, not a cripple, although the last chance cripple works quite well in this pool too, but an emerger. In other words, it's about to hatch and it's going to become an adult in just moments. And yet it's floating high and dry, so it's easy for me to see. And the fish, they're just a sucker for this fly. So I hope you get a chance to fish some great dry fly waters that have active feeders on blue-winged olive hatches. And one of the things that's nice about this is that blue-winged olives tend to hatch sporadically throughout the day. So it's not just a morning game or an evening game. You can fish this fly all day long. It'll work very well for you. Thanks for joining me. Tight lines.